Welcome everyone to the January 25th TVM community meeting. We just have one topic on the agenda today, this on-device testing in TVM CI, I think presented by Mehrdad and possibly with help from David. I'm not actually sure how they've coordinated yet, if at all. Before we get started, I'm just looking at folks on the call. I don't see anyone new to the call that I haven't seen before, so I think we can probably skip over the introductions. Just interrupt me if I'm making a huge mistake here. And you'd like to introduce yourself. Does anyone want to add or remove anything from the agenda this morning before we get going? And then any announcements we should talk about this morning? Actually, I didn't check to see the status of the release thread before this meeting, so I will talk about that next week, worst case. So let's move on from there to discussions. Let's see, Mehrdad, do you want to take it away? Do you want to present, or should I do it?
Yeah, I can present.
All right.
Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Awesome. Yeah. Cool. Sounds good. Thanks everyone for coming to this meeting. I'm gonna present this RFC which I posted just yesterday. So thanks. Sorry about posting it a bit late. So this RFC is about bringing on-device testing to TVM. The main motivation is that, of course, we always want to have better testing coverage in TVM, and in the current state of the TVM, we always test on cloud-supported devices or cloud-supported targets like x86, i386, and GPUs and ARM CPUs. But TVM has more support for more hardware targets, such as like micro TVM devices and hexagon DSP and etc. So we propose a way to an infrastructure to bring on-device testing for these non-cloud devices to TVM. The high-level process for doing this, I should first mention that this proposal is focused on non-merge blocking non-merge blocking CI. So essentially, the idea is not here to to block merging PRs based on these devices that are not available widely, but we are providing a way to do better testing coverage at the same time. Do not add to the overhead of the developers. At a high level, the test process will have few steps to follow. We focus on the nightly testing, nightly on-device testing as an example here, but there are like follow-up section in this RFC that explains other tiers of testing, which would cover more. For a nightly testing, which would be like the simplest case, it starts with finding the right SHA or the commit in the TVM to test. Recent work that has been done with David, I think it's this PR. This recently added a nightly branch to TVM, which is updated, I believe, every night, and it will send the latest nightly commit to this branch. So essentially, this branch is our like source of truth for the commit for nightly that everyone can use, and will make testing across various CIs and hardwares compatible. Consistent. So the first step would be to basically get this commit message from this nightly branch and have a consistent SHA across all CIs. The next step is testing. At minimum, basically, we expect the device test maintainer, and allow me to describe who is a device test maintainer. We use this word to basically refer to anyone who's bringing a hardware on-device testing CI to TVM. So for testing, we expect them to rerun all the simulated integrated tests that are usually run in TVM CI. So for example, for macro TVM as an example, we have a set of tests that runs on QEMU x86 in Zephyr. So if someone is bringing testing CI for macro TVM devices using Zephyr, it is expected to at least run those simulated tests. Of course, the device test maintainers are welcome to bring more tests with more, like bring new tests or just rerun the same test in TVM with more samples or run more tuning steps to get a better test accuracy and performance. For this nightly test, since they are not synced with a specific PR, we don't need to have a mechanism to trigger it from the TVM Jenkins. So essentially, they could be triggered with a timer at any time, once a day or more than that, and then they can provide the results. This way, we give the device test maintainer the flexibility of using their own implementation, and it will be less complicated. Once the testing is done, the next step would be to report the results. Generally, the way that we think about this is the test maintainers that they can develop their own pipeline to polish the test, but the bare minimum requirement is to run these functional testing that exists in main public TVM, and then report the PyTest result by uploading them to an S3 bucket. So the S3 bucket would be provided by the TVM community, and they will have access to upload the results, and we will also provide a way to present those results in on a website or something like that. They are also welcome to present these results in whatever mechanism that they like, but to have a consistent way across these CIs and also to capture these PyTest results for the future, we want them to upload it to an S3 bucket that will last forever. But they could definitely bring their own website and present it in different ways. The other alternative for this would have been like a GitHub repository to use it basically to upload those test results, but for various reasons, this is not an ideal solution. So these are essentially the main 3 steps to bring a minimum nightly testing using your own hardware that you're an expert and you can maintain it. In addition to this, we have more tiers of testing that could be using TVM. The nightly essentially is the minimum and is the tier 3, but we have more tiers. The first tier would be a CI that runs on all PRs. This would be the equivalent of running, TVM CI on in cloud supported devices that we have today. And the second tier would be run the CI, run your on-device testing CI for a specific PRs. So in this tier, we could do something more smart. For example, we could use the TVM bot to trigger it by the committers or contributors if they think a certain PR matters for certain CR. Or we could even do something like parsing the files that has been changed, and based on that, decide whether it requires a certain CI or not. So all these 3 tiers are open for test device maintainers to bring it to TVM. If anyone goes with tier 1 and tier 2, there would be a bit more complication with hooking up their infrastructure to TVM. The main challenge would be to basically let's say we go with tier 1 and we want to run this for all PRs. When a PR is open, we'll run the cloud supported CIs, and then finally it comes down to the on-device testing. We want them to be shown as another entry on the PR so that the committers and also the contributor is aware of that CI. So to provide that, we are suggesting to use a GitHub webhook from our Jenkins or from TVM CI to the on-device CI that is added to TVM, and this GitHub webhook will essentially maintain two things. It will send an event to the new CI to start the pipeline and then mark it as pending on the commit. And then once the job is done, it will show whether it was success or failure. The same way that we show it for the current supported CIs. Let's see. Yeah, so basically we propose this GitHub webhook to provide this connection between the page between the TVM CI and also the new device on-device testing CI, so we can provide the feedback to contributors and also the committers. There are more details and questions that we answered here, but I would like to open the floor for the audience to see if they have any question. We can also go through these questions if you're interested.
Yeah, I guess one other thing that might be good to like preface before we talk about questions is to just like kind of where are we with the RFC and then like what do we want to do following with RFC, you know, to kind of get this all implemented in TVM.
Yeah, so I think we are proposing a few changes on the TVM side to be able to do this. One of them would be provide a way to upload the test results in an S3 bucket. So I think we're gonna do a proof of concept for a cloud service. We're gonna do like a proof of concept on a cloud supported target, but do it in like an external environment from TVM to basically test all these requirements for another test maintainer to bring a CI. Things like this GitHub webhook and also the S3 bucket and the website that we can provide for showing the results.
Right. Yeah, I would just say like so this is kind of like a sketch of what we you know, what we think would be reasonably I guess kind of meet the needs of device test maintainers or hardware vendors who would like to test their hardware with TVM, while still kind of providing some common infrastructure to let people explore test results across different hardware platforms more easily. And so, you know, what we have here is basically a proposal for first RFC, and then we'll probably go and do an implementation of this either with a cloud virtual thing, as Mehrdad said, or even with micro TVM, just to kind of you know, provide sort of a first reference of this and get the infrastructure actually built and ready for more folks to approach. So that's kind of, I think that's roughly what Mehrdad said, but just wanted to re-summarize. So yeah, so I think that thanks for the presentation. That was great. And I guess, yeah, does anyone have any questions or things they want to raise? Like, how does this look to folks as a general hardware testing framework? Are there things you think are missing or things we could clarify? Yeah.
Well, I think it was very cool. I mean, just parachuting myself in the discussion, but yeah, I think it was very cool, and this will give us, you know, some at least some path to get benchmark results and this sort of thing in future. So it's very useful. Do you have any idea on the devices to be added in the common CI, whether we will have some sort of a status page to see which ones are live or there is some problem or something? I know my question is more like because in past I had some experience maintaining a board farms for stuff, and it was very useful to have a stats page which tells users kind of yeah, this thing is malfunctioning, or we have no nodes of this type available in the system as of now because I don't know, it crashed.
Yeah, I think this is definitely we could do once we have an instance of let's say macro TVM. We could show that like we're over like the status of the Zephyr devices and the list of all the devices that we have.
Yeah.
I think this is gonna be mostly for nightly testing. If I think that's what you meant by like the status, right?
Yes, that's exactly what I meant.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It seems like for the nightly tier of testing, reporting, indicating which backends are like still reporting results is good to have sort of like a health metric. And then obviously for tests that are more in the CI, the pre-merge CI pipeline, so stuff that would run on PRs, then I think I agree you need some things there. Actually, David did some work around that he could potentially speak to around kind of splitting out the different CI backends as it is already on the PR.
Right, yeah, I mean, we have everything broken up by platform already, and it's pretty easy to see on GitHub. I mean, if you click a few times, what's working and what's not. But the idea would be there'd be another one for each like third-party thing that comes in.
Yeah, let me see if I can find a link to.
So one question I have is about the status of existing CI itself. Does this proposal make any changes to the existing set of regressions that run with every PR? Or this is like completely additional stuff?
Yeah, I think
Yes.
Go ahead, Merdad. Sorry.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, this is mostly an addition. So even if we're running on an actual physical device at this point, I don't think we're gonna remove the testing on the current simulators in TVM because those are anyway more reliable in terms of CI. So we cannot rely only on the physical devices.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, one of the things we want to preserve here is the ability for developers to run things that, like, if we do want to block CI and force all TVM developers to make that path on sort of custom hardware backend, we want those things to be available to people without having to own a copy or own a particular board or set that up. And so using a simulator is a great way to solve that problem.
Right.
But obviously then that there is going to be a gap always between simulated test coverage and actual test coverage. And so the goal here is to kind of close the gap. Merdad, I did send you one link. I don't know if you can open it up real quick, but just to kind of show an example of what we were kind of thinking about doing. Like this is just some PR that I found, so it's not picking on the PR in particular, but if you go down and look here now on the CI pre-merge, we've basically got entries for each hardware backend here. And so, the idea here being that we could provide more entries here if we wanted to provide sort of feedback per PR on a particular hardware target. And that entry, it could have a green check mark here, it could have a red X, but because it's not a cloud available hardware, it wouldn't block PRs from merging. It would just sort of be an advisory thing here.
Yeah, this looks pretty cool. Thanks David for working on this.
Yeah, for sure. That's all due to David. Yeah, so any other questions about like what should be tested, or I think, if everyone seems good with this, we'll go and do a proof of concept of kind of a first device and see how it goes. And I'm sure we'll have more things to come back and modify after that's finished. But just want to kind of run this by the community and see, is this roughly what you'd want to see basically being tested, or is there something else that we should also consider or include in our proof of concept? Gustavo's got his hand up, so I'll let him.
Yeah, just I'd like to first say thanks a lot, Mehrdad and Dave, for the PR. I guess this is a long-awaited feature in our CI, and I've just started to read it this morning. I haven't finished yet, but if I've got some comments, I will post to the PR. But nice work. I guess I just have one before finishing. I have a question about tier 3, Merda. So the idea is that there will be a nightly branch, which is recommended for people, for the maintainers to test that, to build and test, run that branch, code in that branch nightly, right? And the results of the tests would be uploaded to a AWS S3 bucket. Is that the flow which has been proposed for tier 3, or am I missing?
Yeah, exactly. So you have you like going through these steps for tier 3. You have a SHA of nightly. You pick that, then you run set of tests, which we suggest to at least run the same integration test for that target, which runs on simulator, or for some cases it's actually not running on anything. And then we run and then once that's done, you upload the test results to an S3 bucket, and there will be a website which pull that result and shows it every day.
I see. Okay. And for tier 2, for instance, I was wondering because anybody, for instance, which are submitting a PR which is not related to micro TVM, but let's say somebody runs that the nightly branch, and there is an issue found. So isn't it possible to, in the tier 2, I think the webhooks are involved in this case. So would it be possible to somebody resubmit the APR, but use a third-party hardware to run the test there? Or because the problem is that somebody submits a APR which shows in the CI that it has an issue on micro targets, and to reproduce that, it's how is the workflow proposed for tier 2, for instance, where webhooks are involved? Because the folks, the people submitting has not the real hardware, but my understanding is that it's possible to nonetheless run the commit again in the third-party hardware using some sort of webhook. Do you have any?
Yeah, so I think what you're referring to is related to question number 3.
Yeah.
If someone submitted PR and it's
right.
It breaks on one of those entries that runs on device. So I think, these are 2 cases that we outlined. It might be more than that, but essentially in the first case, the contributor who's sending the PR is basically, their PR is related directly to that target that is breaking. I think that in this case, because it's definitely related, the community's expectation is that the contributor does not ignore the failure, and basically and if they have access to the device, they try to fix it and resubmit the PR until it is fixed. Or if they not, they get feedback from the device maintainer of that particular target. If that's the case, because the PR is related, that's the high level expectation. But if the PR is not related and is breaking something, I guess the first thing that we want to find out is that why our unit test is not capturing that issue. So, and then do follow-up fixes, like by adding the unit test to capture that issue in the main blocking CI, and also fixes it on that particular target. In that case, the expectation is not to block the PR and wait for the fix. It's more of file an issue and move on, and then there will be follow-up PRs who's done by most likely by the test device manager, or test device maintainer, or people who are more specialized in that particular failure. Because you could send a PR that is breaking something in macro TVM, but it's not directly related. But you found a bug that is not being unit tested in the rest of the TVM.
Got it. I think that so my question is, but those just I mean, the item you mentioned, the two cases you mentioned are they apply just for tier 1 and 2, right? It's not because in tier 3 the results go to the S3 bucket, right? So there isn't a way. Is that correct? What I'm understanding, it does apply to tier 1 and 2. Those two cases, or no?
So it's not. It is also related to tier 3 in the sense that in tier 3 there is no actual entry in the PR to see this fail. It happens later. So the expectation is that since each on-device testing CI has a device maintainer assignee who's responsible for maintaining that CI, it is expected from them to file an issue. So the issue would be like, oh, this PR is breaking this CI, and some log messaging with the error. And then it could happen one of these two cases. For example, the PR could have directly break that target, or it could have been non-related and there will be follow-up fixes. But in the nightly cases, it would definitely not block the PR. And then there will be follow-up PRs who would fix the issue.
I see, but in this case, for tier 3, it's mostly a manual thing, right? We need to keep an eye as maintainers of the PRs which are micro TVM related, for instance. Is that what you were proposing?
Yeah.
Or okay, because another issue would be that we are building, we are doing in tier 3 a nightly build. So to pinpoint exactly which commit caused the issue, we would have to like bisect or something like that, right?
Yes.
So I think I see. But anyways, it's manually, right, for tier 3 mostly. So it's an initial effort from us to keep an eye on the CI results based on the nightly branch, and then comment on the PR. But for tier 1 and 2, that would be implemented using webhooks, so it can be automated and advertised in the on PR. Is that right?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, cool, nice. Okay, I'll try to keep I have a few devices, so I will try to keep an eye on the issues and participate on that effort. So cool.
Sounds
Thanks
good.
a lot, Mehrdad. Thanks, David, for all the efforts on making that happen.
Yeah, and I think one thing I'd just add here is like, one of the intents here is to capture the is to try to make the simulator tests catch as many problems as possible, and so that we shouldn't see too much divergence, we hope, between the simulator tests and real on-device tests. But with that said, things can happen, of course. So the hope would be that the majority of the time failures in the on-device CI, if the simulator tests were good enough, would mostly be with the on-device CI infrastructure itself. But obviously, I'm sure there are cases and cases will slip through where the simulated tests didn't capture things, and so PRs get in that do break on real hardware. So
I
So
see.
the test, so is the test set going to be the same as the one that we are using with PR?
so the suggestion is basically to use the same to at minimum test the this is kind of what Murda was mentioning earlier about the idea of, you know, for many hardware targets we have a test that runs in the cloud CI that's maybe a little bit abbreviated maybe in the sense that it uses a simulator instead of real hardware to program a device, or that it, you know, it may not run the test at all, or, you know, there's some sort of abstraction in place to kind of try to provide the same result as running on a real hardware, but because it's an abstraction will necessarily be a little bit different than what you would get on real hardware. And so anyway, the intention is that on the on-device CI, that the kind of the minimum thing that you would run is at least that cloud, that set of tests that you run in the pre-merge CI in cloud.
Okay.
And I think if you want to run more than that, then that's up to you, I guess.
Yeah, I think the contention will come mostly from the additional set that we will plan to run.
Right.
If we are running the existing set from the PR, then probably the failures, I mean, addressing the failure will be kind of fall into the scope of the PR submitter as well, in some sense.
Right.
So,
Agreed. There's lots of trade-offs to be made here, and, you know, we will. Maybe it makes sense then to have two different on-device CIs to report these separately, so that you can report the cloud set, you know, with sort of like a green or red status, and then sort of additional tests with a separate green or red status. We can kind of work through options here. But yeah,
okay.
Anirudh had his hand up, but I wasn't ignoring you. I was just finishing this question out.
I guess one of the things that, oh, sorry.
No, sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
No, I was just about to mention that I believe that as that system stabilizes over time, I think we are going to get more. Leandro mentioned that more metrics for the benchmarks, which are just most valuable in the hardware devices, and that's what's going to diverge from the QMU results or FBP results. So, but of course, I'm just mentioning that this is not an issue by any means, but it just makes more important what's been proposed. Yeah, just a comment. Sorry.
No worries. Yeah, no, that all sounds right. Go ahead, Anirudh.
Yeah, hi, thanks. Yeah, this is amazing. Yeah, thanks a lot for explaining this. I had one quick question. So I gone through the RFC a little bit, not completely, and like I've not read through it multiple times or something like that to completely understand. So I might have missed my eye, but I wanted to ask, like, if so, in what is going to be tested? It's whatever is available in the TVM's built-in repo, like the unit tests, integration tests. That's fine.
Yeah.
If they wanted to add some extra tests, and those tests, so it could it be tests that cannot be publicly pushed? Like the results have to be pushed, but should the test have to be publicly available? Because there might be tests that cannot be pushed publicly without permission. So what about
well, I guess in my mind so far we've found mostly of running tests that are checked into the TVM repo. I don't think there's a reason you couldn't run other tests. Obviously there's just sort of it's sort of the degree to which you want to collaborate with the community on trying to keep those tests working versus you know, kind of keep that responsibility to yourself, I think. But I don't see a reason why you couldn't report, you know, green or red status on those tests if you wanted to. And I will say that one of the things that we were kind of thinking about in terms of results and kind of what are the tests that you would run is kind of going in line with what we've have in the repo now for like micro TVM tests and also for hexagon tests. They are essentially just Pi tests that can be run on real hardware depending on how you configure the test, just how you parameterize the test, basically.
Right.
Yeah, I would just add that I think it's definitely welcome to add the extra test. I mean, the more tests, the better. It shows better coverage, and we probably have more benchmarks if a hardware vendor focuses on set of certain tests. But the main thing that we want to avoid is a CI that always shows failure because some extra tests that are added by the hardware vendor or test maintainer, and they didn't keep them updated. And the rest of the cloud tests that are running on that device is actually passing fine, but the status check is always failure because people start to ignore those status check if it's just failing for a long time.
Right. Okay. So that's for the CI, like tier 1 and tier 2 tests you're saying.
Plus tier 3, because I mean, although tier 3 doesn't block the PR or doesn't show on each PR, but maintainers for that target would frequently go and check the status. If they see a failure, we had this internally for some hardwares, and after a while, these people used to see some failures, and they might even ignore the test failure that they've added because it just goes between, some failure tests.
Right. Okay.
So I think one proposal for that would be to maybe separate those screen check, as Andrew suggested.
Right.
But we can definitely work through those as we follow up on this RFC.
Right. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Thanks.
Go ahead, Gustavo.
Yeah, so still about the tier 1 and tier 2, which we rely, you mentioned that it's possible to use webhooks to send events to third-part Jenkins, for instance, where the test can run. Is that what the idea behind it?
Yes.
Okay. So I think one thing which is missing in the PR is much in the sense that Andrew already mentioned, which is write a little bit more about the details about how that happens, like how I get how I could be as a third part be notified by the CI GitHub, for instance. At least it's not clear to me. I don't know if it's obvious. Sorry if it is. But yeah, I'm just missing that information, like in the PR, how if I would like to give it a try, for instance, to be notified, how I could do that. Maybe that's
like kind of a implementation. I'd say
Okay.
detail, but not saying it's like minuscule, but it's like we don't know exactly what that's going to look like yet. Like I'm thinking we'll probably have like a server in between third parties and GitHub and S3 that does all this stuff. That's probably what we'll start with. So you'd like register with that just by like talking to us. But you know that may change once we actually start trying it.
Sure, you were right. That can be fit in the implementation detail. I guess it's just me being too anxious about it.
No, that's fair point.
Okay.
Yeah, in terms of detail, we did add like there's I think somewhere a little higher up in this RFC there is like yeah, right there that in that second paragraph there's a link there to via GitHub webhook. And I think the initial intent was to do something similar to this. And I think this is fairly documented over here on the GitHub docs to kind of show you how this would work, basically sending you a HTTP request and how that would look. So take a look at this for kind of the triggering part. And then I think like I agree with David that there are some questions about how to receive the results of the of any of these tier 1, tier 2 CIs. And for that, we haven't completely figured that out yet. So bear with us as do that.
Yeah, like one of the like deliverables on this like would probably be like a example for each of the tiers of like a full implementation. So people could just base it on that, and then that would have all the stuff of like what you need to do to get set up.
I see. And I think that Mehrdad was also keeping an I mean, the code for setting up the infrastructure you at Octomel are using for the internal fleet test to set up the infrastructure is anywhere in our TVM repository, or it's it's been a long time we talked about it, Merdad, but I think there is and I'm not sure if it's a Terraform script or something like that, which we can use to set up a Jenkins for like the one you are using. Is it like, if you could refresh my mind if there is it is anywhere in our code base?
I just messaged it in the chat, the link to the repo with all the pieces,
okay.
and there's
Yeah,
some documentation there about it.
I was going to say there is another repo, but then David just sent it.
There you go. Yeah, so you can
Okay.
actually use our Jenkins image. It's just Docker image, some like light customizations, and then that's probably the part people would use mostly. The Terraform stuff is all pretty like OctoML, like TVM CI specific, but I mean, it's obviously it's all there as like a reference point if people want to look at it.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, one thing that was at least I think at one point we had this in the RFC, and I think it's still in there, is maybe in the FAQs there should be a pointer to, as far as here's the Jenkins, like this here shows the Jenkins like server that you can run if you wanted to receive a GitHub webhook from and run based on that. There's also split the Jenkins files up. You could start by using a Jenkins file that's specific to micro or specific to one of these, and we'll need to provide an example of that as part of kind of the initial like implementation of the hardware of one of these on-device CIs. But the idea is that you could just reuse kind of those Jenkins files.
Yeah, that would be great, Andrew, I believe. Yeah, should mention that.
Yeah, there is also this is the sort of the generated Jenkins file that is currently used in TVM. It's fairly straightforward to take, for example, micro like CI Cortex and make it specialized for certain hardware, because it's pretty much self-contained with all the pieces, and it can be it can run completely separately. It probably needs to add some environment variables to make it to work, but these would definitely be one starting point and a template to start.
Okay. Thanks, Merdan.
Yeah, and one more point, like for the, I would imagine we're going to start with like the nightly testing, and for that, you don't need anything to receive a webhook. It could be just like a cron job or something on someone's machine, so that wouldn't even require Jenkins. I would say Jenkins is mostly useful if you want to do like receive a webhook and run some stuff. It already has all that set up.
I see. Just for tier 1 and 2 in this case.
Right, and potentially 3, but I'm not required for 3.
Okay.
Cool. Any other questions or topics for discussion here? Going once, going twice. Okay, thanks everyone, and thanks Merdad and David for putting out this fantastic proposal. We will get back to you as kind of things progress here with the implementation, and otherwise we'll see you guys next week.
Thanks, folks. Bye-bye.
Cool. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone.
Thank you. Bye.